years, I have become thoroughly convinced that feminism has severely hurt our society. It's done so primarily by selling 5 pernicious lies to women. So let's talk about those lies and let's talk about what impact each lie has had on our society. And at the end, I want to talk about why feminism has been so successful in taking women ideologically hostage.
I like this one.
Let her cook.
What is going on YouTube? It is your boy Rome back with another video. If you're new to the platform, welcome to the tribe. By the end of this video, I hope you subscribe. So, want to react to a video that was sent to me by one of my subscribers, longtime subscriber. Shout out to Coach Keith. The video is by a content creator called Baggage Claim. Never heard of this content creator before. In this video, she's going to be going over the lies that have been told to women through feminism. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it.
Let's begin with lie number 1. Women can have sex just like men. This right here is the most dangerous lie that feminism has sold to millions of women. Feminism is always aiming for equality for women, and in many ways they have achieved that. They secured the right to vote, to have financial freedom, as well as the right to work. But as the battles have been won and equality has been achieved, the fervor for more equality has blinded them, where even inequalities that are biologically built in now need to be destroyed. This inequality is most apparent when it comes to sex. Sex is not the same for men and women, and it never can be because of the risks attached for each gender. Pregnancy, assault, and even getting killed are all real possibilities because at the end of the day, men are just stronger and more aggressive. And it's really hard to tell whether a man is going to honor you and take care of you because he's a good man versus a man who's just pretending to be a good man in order to have access to you. Previous generations solved this issue by recognizing sex as something very sacred because it has the power to create life. So they treated a woman's body and trust as inviolate and relegated this union between man and woman to marriage. Why? Because marriage offered a whole bunch of security that a casual encounter just couldn't. There was safety in the contract of marriage. The man was legally bound to his wife as well as to his children and had the societal and financial responsibility for them. This gatekeeping of sex was really effective because it forced men to have to work for that privilege through marriage. They had to prove to be worthy of a woman, to be worthy of someone's daughter. They had to be financially responsible, have a good reputation in their society, and show a willingness to step up to those responsibilities. Now, of course, there were instances of just terrible men pretending to fit the bill, but overall, the system worked really well in protecting women, but more importantly, forcing men to grow up. Now, fast forward to today, where in our society, one of the biggest problems that we're facing is that men seem to be caught up in this perpetual arrested development. Even well into their 40s and 50s, there are these instances of adult toddlers, and cities like San Francisco and New York have turned into Neverland, where people really just don't have to grow up. The combination of dating apps as well as the proliferation of hookup culture has ended that noble act of men courting women and honestly turned sex into a commodity. They have reduced sex down to a meaningless act. The push to have sex like men was aimed to empower women, to help them claim their sexuality and throw off societal expectations. But has it actually helped women? Aimed at freeing women, the sexual revolution has actually freed men to use women, all while telling women to feel empowered by being disposable. Like I said, this is the most dangerous feminist lie. Unfortunately, it's not the only one.
And I've always said this, especially when it comes to the body count conversation. The real reason, and it's just pure common sense, why women will always be shamed for sleeping around more so than men will, and will never be able to sleep around like men, the men that can, and not get shamed for it, is because women control access to sex and men want sex. So, and it's like, with that being said, if you control access to sex, it's gonna be more respected if a man can get sex from a lot of women because he gained access. Well, as you, on the other hand, you're giving away the access. So if you're giving away the access to so many men, then it's kind of like, it's like, I don't understand why that's so hard for women to understand, but okay. Yeah, y'all know I'm just being a smart ass. We know that they got enough common sense to know why they just don't care.
Lie number two, women had to fight for the right to vote, while men were just granted the right to vote. Yes, women had to fight for the right to vote, but so did men. Voting is a pretty novel concept. For centuries, societies have been organized around monarchies, where one person, either the king or the queen, had all the power, while the people surrounding them were trying to have checks on that power. In the West, voting was first introduced in the 13th century, where a small percentage of the population were eligible to vote depending on land ownership. The right was slowly expanded, but even as late as 1832, in England, less than 10% of the population were eligible to vote. In colonial America, voting was restricted to land-owning men only, because property ownership meant you paid taxes. So there was this belief that if you paid taxes, you had stake in the society. Universal male suffrage did not exist until the late 1800s, where many men had to fight and die in wars before they were granted that right. So while women did secure the right to vote in the 1920s, it was only about 50 years after all men got the right to vote, around the 1870s, depending on when the states passed the laws. The idea that men just gave themselves all the power is a feminist myth. Both men and women had to earn that right to vote because for most of history, people in power did not believe in distributing that power. This is not limited to America either. You can see that the timeline of universal suffrage is very similar across the world, meaning this was an evolution of trust in the people that all societies have had to go through.
And you know what? I'm glad she brought that up because that just goes to show you how brainwashed women are, especially when it comes to feminism. Because you can literally just go back in history and find out that men, all men, weren't always able to vote. But the way women describe feminism, you would think that was the case, when in reality it's really not. And they can look them up. They can look this up themselves, just like she just showed you. It's ridiculous, man. It's ridiculous. So brainwashed that you don't even want to fact check anything.
Lie number three, women were locked up in the home by men until feminism freed them. This is the feminist myth that men had to lock women up in the home because they're afraid of feminine power. This is such a misunderstanding and disconnection from what the world used to be like, because life was really hard, not just for women, for everyone. For much of history, women stayed in the home out of pure necessity. Before electricity, washing machines, or running water, housework wasn't just about doing chores, it was survival. Hauling buckets of water, scrubbing clothes, making bread from grain that you milled yourself, sewing every piece of clothing that your family wore. These were all tasks that were absolute paramount to the family's survival. Women were doing all of this all while raising children without any modern medicine, so without antibiotics, hospitals, or vaccines. Meanwhile, it's not like the men were off to some cushy job in the boardroom. Instead, they were breaking their backs in the fields, in mines, in factories, just dealing with horrid working conditions. Or, let's be honest, dying in wars to protect their families as well as their nation. Everyone was fighting to survive. And then capitalism changed everything. The division of labor, which is one of the primary principles of capitalism, meant that people could now specialize, trade, and buy what they once had to make for themselves. This freed people up from survival work, and that freedom sparked the inventions that have built the world that we live in today. We are surrounded by these inventions. 200 years ago, I would have had to spend all my time churning butter, sewing clothes, making candles. Now, I just buy them. It would have taken me 2 days to do my laundry. Now I just press a button. And that time that was spent behind survival work can now be turned into more productive work, more specialized work. The same has been true for men as well. Machines have taken over all of that back-breaking work. So infrastructure work and building things has become so much easier. And people are now free to build, to think, and to create in ways that our forebears never could. Women have had biological limitations that have also kept them in the home. And you know what? Capitalism solved that too. In 1888, the first sanitary pad was created, which made it far easier for women to leave the house during their periods without the discomfort and the worry. So women were limited in the home because of survival, because of biology, but have been liberated by human ingenuity, by our forebears conquering nature and building a safer society. We women were freed by civilization itself.
Again, another great point, because it's funny because when women complain about, men wanting traditional women, the cooking and cleaning and all that shit, the way women describe it, you would think they were talking about the type of women that she mentioned years ago before capitalism hit and all the new inventions came out that made basically survival a lot easier. And I always found that a bit weird. I'm like, and they wonder why men be so quick to say that they would be happy to trade places, and the women go work and make all the money. Because as men, we know, okay, for one, I don't got to do laundry all the time, but when I do, it's like, okay, we got a washer and dryer. So while the clothes going, I can get the rest of the house cleaned up, and then by the time I'm finished, the loads should be done. I can fold those up. Okay, laundry done, clean house, the made meals and shit. Like what? Like I just, it's like I don't know, bro. It's like I mean, it seems pretty simple. And then when you get the kids, spend your time with them, take care of them, make sure they good, and just chill. Like I don't know, man. But I mean, the way women describe it, you would think they had the way they describe it, you would think they're asking men to wash their clothes by hand and churn butter and shit. Like what the fuck?
Lie number 4. Marriage is slavery and children are a burden, and the only way that we could reach our highest potential was through our work. This cultural push has unfortunately created an epidemic of loneliness, nihilism, but worst of all, it has turned men and women into enemies. Those very same feminists now argue for government-paid maternity leave, subsidized childcare, and many other safety nets to improve the lives of women. But before feminism, a woman didn't need to turn to the government for help. Instead, she turned to her husband, to her family, to her community. Marriage is not this predatory institution where men get a servant for life. Instead, it has always been a contract between the sexes to team up and brave the challenging world. Men were the protectors who went out into the harsh world for resources, and women created the safety and comfort of the home where the man could retreat and they could raise children together. That was always the purpose of marriage, stability through partnership. It's on the bedrock of this partnership that every community is formed and every nation has stood. This is why these calls for the government to solve so many social problems has become so loud. It's because right now in our nation, our sense of community is so weak, and that's because our families are so weak, and that's because our marriages are so weak. As of 2024, only 47% of households are headed up by a married couple, which is down from 79% in 1949. And 1 in 4 Americans, that's 91 million people, live alone. No wonder mental health, self-harm, and substance abuse are on the rise. Human beings were not meant to be alone. We were meant to live in families, to be part of communities, to find meaning through responsibility to others. And paternity support for women wasn't supposed to be funded by the government. No, instead, men were called upon to step up and provide for their families, since fatherhood was considered just as sacred a duty as motherhood. But feminism believes that dependence is oppression, obligation is oppression, responsibility is oppression, that what the individual, particularly a woman, is entitled to is a life that is completely unhooked from others, with no one to answer to, with no one to care for, and no one who truly needs her. Meanwhile, all of her needs should be met by a non-judgmental government. But that is not liberation. It's actually slow spiritual decay. There is this momentary pleasure of knowing that you have no responsibilities, but that pleasure comes at the price of purpose, and all that's left at the end of all of that pleasure is loneliness. There are plenty of imperfections in marriage, and that's expected because people themselves are imperfect. But when it's done correctly, when the two people are oriented correctly, marriage gives people a life of purpose, stability, and love. And children offer this path of rebirth, continuity, and meaning. I'm not saying that women shouldn't work. If that's what calls to you, absolutely you should. All I'm saying is that you should not sacrifice your family life at the altar of your career. Because the truth is that meaning comes from being needed, from forming bonds, from creating family and community. And none of that is possible without self-sacrifice, and also sacrificing your independence. But in exchange for that price, you get the opportunity to build something so much bigger than yourself. And that is the true power of marriage.
Yeah, but the part that's being left out is women are incentivized to break up these marriages now. Therefore, by default, men are no longer incentivized to get married. The divorce laws are set up based on how things were in the past, like you mentioned, but that's not the world that we live in now. They need to update those laws, as well as getting DNA testing mandatory, um, mandatory 50-50 custody. Like, we need to get all that straightened out before we can move forward and things get better. You got to update the laws to how things are now as opposed to where they were years ago before women enter the workforce and start chasing careers and shit.
Lie number 5. Sex work is empowering for women. Feminism believes that if women are unhappy, it's society's fault. In this case, if women are unhappy participating in sex work, whether that's through prostitution or making explicit content, the problem isn't the act itself. The problem is that society unfairly looks down on it. To correct this, there have been many campaigns to argue that sex work is real work, and women should be applauded for making content on OF because they are owning their sexuality. Just like the rest of the feminist lies that we've been told, the intention is to help women, but does it really? The adult industry doesn't actually empower women, and it never has. It has only ever existed to exploit them for money. There are endless stories of young women getting lured into creating this type of content with false promises of fame and money, only to be locked into predatory cycles where consent is extremely blurred, filming conditions are absolutely horrid, and worst of all, their bodies get turned into a commodity that they no longer own. While women are more in control on platforms like OF, they really join a platform like that convinced by these stories of the top 1% where women are making millions of dollars, only to find themselves crossing their own personal boundaries to make pennies. All for what? The industry codifies women. It has turned their bodies into products, and it trains men to see intimacy as something that can be purchased. And engaging in this kind of transaction, both for men and for women, robs them of any self-respect, because once something sacred can be bought, it stops being sacred, and no amount of cultural acceptance can actually change that. Loud declarations that sex work is empowering might drown out your inner voice that hates being something that can be purchased, but it won't ever fix that instinctive shame that comes from knowing that your self-worth has been reduced to a price. In order for a person to respect themselves, some things have to be above money, like our integrity, like our convictions, but above all, our body. And that's why a person for sale, no matter how much money they make, eventually feels worthless. So why has this feminist ideology taken such a hold? Just the single issue of abortion proves that women are possessed by this ideology. Abortion has turned women into single-issue voters because many of them believe that a child isn't a gift, it's a curse. And that is part of the clue there. Ideologies that sell victim narratives take a hold in people because they want to see themselves as a victim. And a victim is someone that a society should aim to protect, but also look at them as justified in whatever action that they want to take as recompense for those slights. All of this really translates to getting a blank check to do whatever the hell you would like, and never needing to explain yourself or own up to your own mistakes, because it's always society's fault, it's always men's fault. That is the relationship with the self and with reality that feminism is peddling. And honestly, that sounds so good to people. No personal responsibility, an external excuse for everything wrong in my life, and I can do whatever the hell I want and never have to own up to any of the consequences? Sign me up. This is why when you try to argue with the specifics of feminist ideology, the true believers won't be willing to change their mind, because underneath it all they want to do is see themselves as victims. They're locked in.
Well, as far as that last point, you can just refer to the video that I just uploaded a couple days ago about women being 304s and now they mad because they can't find a husband or a boyfriend. And that's really what you're starting to see a lot of in the West, bro. A lot of women that want to be 304s, want to have a hot girl summers, and then they get mad when no men are taking them serious. Or they're upset because the men that they know that are good for them now are even no longer giving them attention, or those men are treating them the same way the men that they let that they just let run through them. Because I'm like, at this point, men are starting. I'm like, at least the men worth a damn are starting to kind of look at the dating situation like, well, damn, if I had to build myself up for you to give me the time of day, but these other guys didn't. Like, why the hell should I have to wait and court you and lining down you all like that just to get the same end result. You feel me? I'm like, so I completely understand it, and that's part of the problem. And it came from feminism, man. I'm like, all that sexual liberation shit. I'm like, that's exactly where it starts at. Exactly where it starts at. Now, let me know what you think about this. If you're new to the platform, oh yeah, and I'll make sure I'll leave the link to the video in full if you want to go support her. If you're new to the platform, please subscribe, OGs. I appreciate the love and support. Make sure y'all hit that bell notification. That way y'all know when I'm uploading. Hit the like button because that's what the algorithm and helps me reach a broader audience. Also, look out for the travel vlog channel as well as the live show channel. Both links are in the description. Until the next video, y'all. Deuces.